For more on the transition of power and the maneuvering between the Obama administration and the president-elect's transition, let's bring in New York Congressman Peter King, a Republican who met with Mr. Trump earlier this month. Congressman, thanks for joining me as always.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you very much.
So see if you can clear this up for me. On the one hand, we have President-elect Trump who suggests that the transition is not going smoothly. And on the other hand, we have President-elect Trump who suggests that the transition is going very smoothly. Which one is right?
I would say what Donald Trump is saying is that some of the statements that President Obama is making, or some of the actions as far as the UN with Israel, for instance, and even President Obama saying he thinks he could have won if he had run again, that is interfering with, let's say, the psychology of the transition. But as far as the actual positioning, as far as the appointments, as far as getting his new administration in place, Donald Trump feels that the transition is going very smoothly. And overall, from what I understand, that the actual people working at the White House are cooperating with the Trump people to make that work. So I think his complaint is with President Obama himself, not with the administration, and certainly not what's happening on the ground.
Okay, fair enough. Let me ask you, though, is it fair to say that President-elect Trump has also not hewed to traditional norms when it comes to respecting the idea that there's one president at a time? He's been very active talking about Taiwan and China. He's been discounting what the intelligence community says. It's also fair, if you'll let me posit the point that, okay, what President Obama said about maybe he would have won a third term, it's also true that President-elect Trump hasn't really been traditional either.
No, he hasn't been traditional, but I think, for instance, in the administration, when you had, and without starting this issue all over again, when you had somebody in the CIA leaking out that they concluded that the Russians was supporting Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton. I mean, that to me was an unfair shot coming from the administration, especially since they never provided evidence to back it up. But overall, I think that Donald Trump is non-traditional. But on the other hand, he's also been very respectful of President Obama. Like you notice at those rallies he was having, the victory rallies, and anytime people would start booing or making any noises about either President Obama or the First Lady, Donald Trump would jump in to defend them and say how cooperative they've been, how friendly they've been, and he was giving them credit for the very best of intentions. So, listen, all in all, Donald Trump is non-traditional. He's doing it his way, but I think he is showing respect for both President Obama and the presidency.
I'm sure you disagreed with much of Secretary of State Kerry's speech today about the Israeli settlements. But let me just ask you, as a general point, is it fair to say that the continued construction of settlements in the West Bank is actually an impediment to a peaceful solution and a two-state solution?
I think ultimately some of those settlements are going to have to be scaled back. But I think despite what Ben Rhodes was saying, there was a moral equivalence tone to what John Kerry was saying today between settlements on one hand and terrorist activities and murders carried out by Palestinians on the other. And also, I don't think he gave the Israelis enough credit for what they've done over the years. I remember back in 2000, and President Clinton later told me this is one of his biggest disappointments, is when basically the Israelis gave the Palestinians almost everything they wanted. That was Prime Minister Barak at the time with Arafat, and in the end, Arafat walked away from the deal, even though President Clinton spent the last, 6 weeks of his term in office trying to close that deal. And the Israelis made the concessions that were required. I was over in Israel in 2005 when Prime Minister Sharon gave up Gaza. And that was, again, he did that really resisting many people in his own country. So Israelis have made sacrifices over the years, and I don't think John Kerry gave them enough credit. Listen, I was actually in Jerusalem with Prime Minister Rabin in 1993, the very day that the agreement was reached in Oslo with Peres and Arafat. I remember meeting with Shimon Peres just several days later. And so, I mean, over these years, 1993 on, since Oslo onward, I think the Israelis have made many steps toward peace, and they've not been reciprocated by the Palestinians. And I don't think John Kerry made enough of that today.
Congressman Peter King, thank you so much, sir. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you, Jake. Thank you very much.